Hi everyone, Janet Boyer here with the Say It with Tarot podcast. I hope you're doing well. If you're not familiar with me, I am the author of Back in Time Tarot, Tarot in Reverse, Naked Tarot, and the co-creator of the Coffee Tarot and Snowland deck with my artist husband, Ron Boyer. Today, I'd like to talk about tarot and intentions, how we can use tarot cards for intentional manifestation in our life. Now, I'm not talking about materialistic, hey, I'm gonna manifest a red Ferrari or something, or the secret. It's more how I draw to myself those experiences that I want to have. How do I invite more of what I want in my life as opposed to what I don't want? And with intentions, we're focusing again on what we do want. If you focus on what you don't want and negative things, you tend to draw that into your life. That is not to say if bad things happen to you or challenges happen, it's because you caused it or you intended it. That is not what I'm saying at all. I don't agree with that extreme New Age philosophy. What I'm saying is more of a field of vision. You can have a gorgeous vista in front of you. You could be sitting, in your backyard and the beautiful gardens in front of you, or you can be at the foot, at the base of a hill and you see this gorgeous mountain rising above you or what have you. But something like a rotten tree or you hear a motorcycle blaring in the background and it destroys your sense of stillness. What I'm saying is what you choose to focus on is what will expand in your consciousness. So if you choose to focus on the rotten tree, or if you choose to focus on the irritating noise that's intermittent, as opposed to the beauty in front of you, well, that's going to just seem bigger and bigger, and you'll get more and more irritated. So when I'm talking about intentions, I'm talking about narrowing your awareness in one sense to what is good, uplifting, positive, constructive, balanced, as opposed to, kind of letting your mind just go crazy with catastrophic thinking or focusing on what you think is wrong and stuff like that. Now, intentions, as I see them, they're mini maps, especially with tarot cards. I mean, it's like really a portable deck of, vision maps or vision boards. They're mini maps. They gently guide you towards your desired destination. And so they can be specific enough to get you there, but general enough to allow for some, serendipity, sightseeing, and even some shortcuts on your journey. That's why I'm not really big on New Year's resolutions because they seem like they're so in stone. If you fail at them, you just feel such a sense of shame and defeatism and things like that. But we're intentions, they're more of a, where you want to head, what you want to see more of, what you want to feel more of in your life. And I also see intentions as a form of course correction as well. Just like an airplane pilot makes dozens of course corrections during a flight, so too our intentions can help us aim the nose of our plane in a particular direction during the flight of our life, to get where we want. If we veer off course, or we experience extreme turbulence or we lose our way, no worries. We can just consult our intentions once again to point our nose in the desired direction. Now, I don't want you to underestimate the power of feelings when it comes to intention. This isn't just a head thing. In the last podcast, I talk about the four elements and kind of the energy surrounding both. And sometimes people just keep their intentions in the mental realm, the swords realm, but it's important that we actually embody and feel those things as well. Embody being the earth, feeling, can be more of the intuitive hits or some of the optimism or feelings and compassion of the cup suit or the energizing wands, that's enterprising and creative and courageous. So daily intentions are much easier to perform and habits are much easier to form when they're fun. That is when we feel good about what we're doing and feel optimistic about the results. Now, I have a story. I once heard, and so I'm going to tell it to you. And I love it because it so much portrays the power of intention and focus. Okay, there's a man named Jake. He's a retiree from Pennsylvania, and he decides to move to Florida. After living there for several years, he went back to his hometown in Pennsylvania to celebrate Christmas with his sister. Now, Jake and his sister drove up to church to attend Christmas Eve service. Before the service started, he ran into one of his former co-workers who lived about 15 miles away. "Jake, good to see you," exclaimed Bob, vigorously shaking the retiree's hand. "How's your place in Florida? You know, Mary Lou and we're considered moving there after I retire next year." Jake stroked his chin thoughtfully. "Well, Bob, how are your neighbors? In the street where you live, right now." "Oh, they're great," said Bob. "That will be one of the drawbacks of moving away, missing the peaceful atmosphere and our friendly neighbors. We've made quite a few friends over the years." Jake replied, "It just so happens that my street in Florida is the exact same way." Just then, organ music began to play. The men shook hands once again, and Bob promised to keep in touch with Jake, especially to look at some property down in Florida. After the church service, Jake's sister told him about a new diner that just opened in the next town, so they decided to drive there for a bite to eat. As they sat down in a booth, a voice called from one of the stools, "Jake, is that you?" It was Lloyd, the loan officer that used to handle Jake's accounts. "Hi, Lloyd. Yep, it's me." Lloyd chuckled. "Good to see you. Hey, how's Florida? I'm sick of these Pennsylvania winters, and Bess and I were considering moving down there." "Well, how are the neighbors where you live, Floyd? How is the atmosphere in the neighborhood?" They're terrible. Cars speeding down the road at all hours, music turned up full blast, people moving in who could care less about creeping up their property. No one speaks to each other anymore, and when they do, rude. So rude." "Ah," said Jake. "That's exactly how the people are where I live, too." So the moral of the story, how you perceive where you live and the people that surround you will likely follow you no matter where you go. Now, sure, this isn't 100% the case. Sometimes there really is crappy living environments with, awful neighbors. I've been there. But how we deal with that living environment and neighbors, including how resourceful we are in ignoring what they're doing or blocking out the sound, can greatly affect our experiences. The same place can be a heaven for some or a living hell for others. So what might be the difference? Attitude and intentions. Now, again, I'm not talking about if you live in a very dangerous, awful neighborhood, or if you have a psycho neighbor that's hell-bent on creating hell just because they have nothing else better to do. I'm just talking about the everyday ups and downs of life, whether it's not just neighbors, it's just where you're driving, the people you pass in the mall, the people you see in the grocery store, your coworkers, how you view humanity in general, how you view a Facebook group you're in, how you view pretty much everything. So, the difference between what could be heaven for someone and hell for another, even though it might be the same place, is really attitude and intentions. So if you intend to see and sow peace, you'll likely experience it. If you intend to be friendly and see everyone as a potential friend, you'll likely experience it. If you intend peace and harmony, you will ignore what others are doing, soundproof your home, and experience a slice of paradise. My husband Ron made a fascinating observation one time. He says the future is a series of todays strung together. I love that. The future is a series of todays strung together. As soon as he said that, I imagined a beautiful pearl necklace being strung bead by bead. When we intend for days filled with purpose, peace, kindness, and clarity, a beautiful necklace called life is ours to admire and enjoy. It also reminds me of the many cinematic incarnations of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, and how the ghost of Jacob Marley warned Scrooge that the heavy, burdensome metal change forged together by Scrooge's cruelty and stinginess was already as big as Marley's 7 years prior, and he was still adding on to it daily with his behavior and attitudes towards money and humanity. Now, both of those are powerful images of what happens energetically as a result of our choices, attitudes, and behaviors. And it's just as possible that we create a karmic trail or pearl necklace or heavy chains that we may have to reckon with someday, all based on our intentions and, how we're feeling, and, especially if our thoughts and our attitudes and our judgments and our reptilian instincts go unchecked. So how do intentions work? And that's a good question. The short answer is quantum physics. But a thorough treatment of that topic is beyond the scope of this podcast, although it is a foundation of it. Manly P. Hall once said, "The individual who is unable to control his mind will be its victim." Intentions help us harness the mind's extraordinary capabilities to affect the field of matter and energy, what we call reality. And experiments in quantum physics have shown that photons can behave as either a wave or a particle. When photons are consciously observed and measured, they act as particles. Myriad studies have proven over and over that the only difference between whether a photon behaves as a wave or a particle is the scientist observing and attempting to measure that photon. So consciously observing and acting upon energy and objects changes their behavior. If this works in the sense of quantum physics and actual physics experiments, how much more does it occur in our daily life? So since there have been studies, we can apply that to just everyday living. There's been studies with plants where a researcher will light a match and put it next to a leaf. Electrodes show the plant screaming, but that's not all. When a group of scientists filled the room with plants, including the researcher who did that particular experiment before, the plant that almost got burned screamed when the match holder got near it. So that's kind of weird. It's almost like the plant had a memory. To have a bunch of scientists fill a room, and when the one who, lit that match or that lighter near the plant with a different experiment, when that particular researcher got near that plant, it's almost like it set off these electrical signals. It was almost like a form of screaming. It knew which research brought it discomfort and fear. Now, if that is true for plants, how much more with a complex system like our body? In the book, The Hidden Life of Trees, What They Feel, How They Communicate, author Peter Wohlleben, he relates how trees live in families, and they warn others of danger, and they even have friends. I kid you not, a tree prevents its branches from encroaching upon friends beside it, but it will allow wild growth to interfere with a non-friend. In an experiment, one tree even grew differently on one side because a friend was next to it. Now, if all this is true for plant life, how much truer would it be for humans who give off all sorts of electromagnetic signals? At a molecular level, everything is vibrating, even objects that appear quite solid, like a boulder or a couch or a tree. In fact, most of what's there, if you look under a microscope, is empty space. When we vibrate at a certain level, or consciously try to affect the field of reality, we do in fact change some aspects of it. In his book, How Quantum Activism Can Save Civilization, physicist Amit Goswami, PhD, he was featured in the movie What the Bleep Do We Know? And he's also the author of the book God Is Not Dead. He wrote in that How Quantum Activism Can Save Civilization, he wrote, "To change possibility into actuality, a new source of causation is needed. We call this downward causation. When we realize that consciousness is the ground of all being, and material objects are possibilities of consciousness, then we also recognize the nature of downward causation. It consists of choosing one of the facets of the multifaceted object of the possibility wave that then becomes manifest as actuality. Do we have free will? To the extent that we can access our higher consciousness and choose from there, you bet there is free will, complete freedom to choose from the quantum possibilities offered in any given situation. Free will to choose the world as well as God and godliness, creativity as well as spiritual transformation. Quantum physics is the physics of possibilities, and its indisputable message then is that we potentially have the freedom to choose outcomes to live by from among these possibilities." To read more about this in these kind of fascinating studies, I highly recommend the book The Intention Experiment. Using Your Thoughts to Change Your Life and the World by Lynn McTaggart. I mean, it is just utterly, utterly fascinating, including the experiments demonstrating how changing the shape of a bicep muscle can be done simply by sitting on a couch and using your brain, or showing how directed thoughts produce demonstrable physical energy even over a remote distance, perhaps altering the very molecular structure of the object of intention. Now, you may have heard of the ice cube experiment where participants were blindfolded and they were told that their hand would come in contact with very hot water. However, the researchers, unbeknownst to the participants, touched their skin with an ice cube instead. Surprisingly, the ice cube caused a burn on the skin. How is this possible? Expectation and the power of the mind to change our body's sensory experience and reactions. So why tarot? Well, not only do tarot cards serve as mini maps to your highest best self, but they're also like portable vision boards, as I said earlier. Have you ever heard of a vision board? It's where you decide that an intention or a set of goals is something that you want, and you end up filling that vision board with images and, words and things like that. Well, you can do the same with tarot cards, depending on what you want to focus on. And in the future, I'm going to discuss different tarot cards and how that will help us manifest certain things in our life. But I just wanted to give you an introduction of how tarot cards can be used in intention work and for manifestation. So it's really exciting, right? So I look forward to bringing more of this to you in the future. I hope you feel inspired. I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.